Right, the first glimpse of cricketing action for India and Australia, the men's cricket teams, of course, post the COVID era, could not have begun on a better note. November 27th is when all of this action began. We're sitting today, it's Jan the 20th, 2021, a month and a half of absolutely exhilarating cricketing action. 3 formats, we've seen it all and we've experienced it all. The highs, the lows, you name it. And us as cricket fans, we've experienced it all, both in Australia and in India. And today we're sitting down, of course, to review the Border Gavaskar Trophy, the marquee event between these two incredible cricketing nations that went down to the tee, that went down to the wire at the Gabba, and India came out on top. But of course, it was a series that went down to the wire. Both these teams were incredibly competitive, and the results are there to be seen. Joined, of course, by Guy Walker from Australia, Sandipan Banerjee from Kolkata. Guys, it's been an incredible series. Where do we begin? Where do we begin is the question, really, Guy. How do we start this? Because there's just been so much to talk about, and there's so much that we've experienced.
Yeah, I know. Where do we start? We could bring up 50 different moments in the Test match series, but I'll tell you what, it's extremely disappointing for Australia to not be able to, after the first Test, bowling India out for 36. No Kohli, Rahane takes over, injuries after injuries, and Australia still couldn't get the job done. So I think what's come out of this is India are just a force to be reckoned with now. Can you imagine when Kohli comes back, the injured players come back, and you guys get on your home conditions, you're going to be hard to beat.
That's correct. And of course, Sandipan, guys obviously summed it up pretty well. But the narrative heading into this series was entirely different. Nobody gave India a real chance. The experts sitting all around the world predicted a 4-0 win to Australia, especially with Virat back home, and we already had pre-existing injuries. Nobody gave India a chance.
Yeah, as I've written on my post-match piece on Cricket News, that this is probably one of the greatest underdog story in the history of any sport. Forget about cricket. I mean, history of any sport. I mean, this is incredible. This is unbelievable. I mean, it has been like 24 hours or so, maybe, but it has yet to sink in. The feeling is yet to sink in. I still couldn't believe that India went for those runs, and they have managed to beat Australia in Australia, that too in Gabba. So yeah, I mean, this is a great story of perseverance, grit, resilience. All these adjectives we can use, but words are not enough.
Guy, from an Australian perspective, I mean, we're obviously singing praises of India, and we're talking about India's grit and determination. But Australia did turn up in bits and pieces, if not for prolonged spells of the game, to take it to India. But however, how is the country taking all of this at the moment? Because it's a country, from the outside at least, we perceive that it's a country where there's a lot of chatter. Everyone's very passionate about the game. It matters. The Australian team's performance matters at the global stage. What's been the reaction like so far?
Yeah, I think it's been quite understanding that there's questions that need to be asked. I think the Australian cricket team's been such a powerhouse for so many years, is that the Australian people expect the Australian cricket team to be tough to beat, especially over here. So, especially India winning the last series on Australian soil, and especially after Adelaide. Like, I think I still remember us three chatting after that first Test match, and we're saying it was one of the worst days in Indian cricket, but getting bowled out for 36. So, and now you look at it, they've come and won the series, which is quite amazing. So, there's some serious questions asked at the moment, boys. I think a lot of the media channels are saying, how do we lose when we've 1-0 up, no Kohli, a lot of injuries. So, there's a lot of talking points, especially around the batting. Openers, we still don't have 2 consistent openers. Even Warner, he struggled. Matt Wade, Trav Head, the Joe Burns scenario. Like, there's a hell of a lot of questions around Australian cricket at the moment. And I think yesterday, what it showed as well is that the 3 quicks and Nathan Lyon, they just looked ruined. They looked completely flat. They looked like 3 or 4 bowlers that have bowled a lot this series. So very much so, a lot of questions to be asked, boys, and a little bit of a dark day in Australian cricket history.
Looks like there was a bit of complacency, do you reckon, after the 36 all out that sort of sneaked in and derailed Australia?
I think so. I think you think about it as well. Kohli left, like, it's the absolute best batter in the world. He's left. Rahane's picked up the captaincy, who hasn't scored 100 in 3 years, and injuries. Sharmi was injured, and I think so. I think there was a bit of complacency, but like I said, we kept saying after each Test match is, if India don't win, we just want to see fight from them. And you guys must be very proud Indian supporters, because the way that Ashwin and Vihari, I think he's a forgotten man in that 4th Test to draw it, and then even Washington and Shardul in that first innings, like both made Australia stay out there for longer and scored valuable runs. Like there's absolutely nothing more India could have done better. Like they were incredibly impressive.
Sandipan, let's stick with that first Test for a while, right? So you're looking at India dominating. Of course, India obviously did play a good part in the first day. The second day as well, they looked decent. That 1 hour spell really derailed India. But to bounce back from that, right? Of course, Ajinkya Rahane and Ravi Shastri have come out and said, listen, we told ourselves that we're not going to think of Adelaide. We're only going to think further. But it's not as easy as that, isn't it? To put something like that behind you. What do you think went into that? To move forward from such a momentous loss for the country.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they can now say that they haven't spoken about Adelaide, but exactly. Obviously, whenever they probably bat in the next innings and at Melbourne, I think you are bound to remind when you are facing Hazelwood. If you are like Ajinkya Rahane, imagine if you are like Cheteshwar Pujari, you are bound to get that nightmares of Adelaide. I can rather say. So of course, I think the innings Rahane played, I think that was a huge morale booster for the team. When a captain leading from the front, taking on the attack, which bowled them out for 36 in the last innings, and when the captain took the lead from the front and took on that Australian attack, scored that 140 odd runs, the brilliant 140 odd runs. I think that installed the self belief in this team that okay, fine, this Australia you can get runs against this Australia. So I think that innings, in the context of the whole series, I would definitely give credit to that innings of Ajinkya Rahane.
Yeah. December 19th, 2020 was when we got when that fateful incident for India, of course, 36 all out, and then of course January 19th is when we scored 320 odd runs in a single day, the third highest amount of runs scored on day 5 of Test guy. What do you think changed in that interim?
Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? I think I'm not sure which one of you boys mentioned it, but one of you said they want to win for Rahane, and I think that just shone through more than anything. Even them last closing moments of when Rishabh was getting closer, they were all looking around to Rahane, and you could just see how much they love him. So a question for both of you is, do they consider letting Rahane keep the captaincy?
Sandeep is going to jump on that.
Yes, of course. I have already tweeted about it. I have written about it.
Oh, really?
India should. Yeah. Yes, I always like Rahane as a captain. He's a very cool, composed, leader. And as I was talking with Sumedhh last evening, that a leader you cannot groom a leader. Leadership instincts needs to be there in you. And probably people like Rahane and Rohit Sharma, they have that. So I guess India should definitely consider in the long run. But as we have already announced the team for the England series, and Virat Kohli is back as a captain. But in an ideal world, India should have retained Rahane as a captain. But in modern day sports, there are plenty of backstage issues. There are management issues, player management deals. Depends. Especially when you are a high-profile team like India and you are a high-profile team like Virat Kohli. So I guess I think if you just talk from a cricketing point of view, talk just from the from the management point of view. Yeah, I think Rahane should have been retained.
The counter question, guy, to that is, as an opposition, right? As the opposition, who would you rather not face as skipper? Would you not have Virat as skipper? Would you not have Rahane as skipper?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Kohli can still be the same player that he is without being a skipper. Absolutely. I think he can be that. I think he can be that aggressive kind of guy. But I think sometimes as skipper, being so big that he is, he's probably one of the biggest athletes in the world. He probably can't give as much time to the players as Rahane does. That's why I really, really respect Ajinkya, because he's not an outspoken person, or he doesn't come across like that, where it just seems like he nurtures relationships with team members in the squad. And I think because Kohli's so big, he's probably got so many different things on his plate, like outside of cricket. So that was the thing that really shocked me yesterday watching the game, was every single time they scanned over Rahane, you could just see how badly he wanted to win it. And every single time it scanned, all the Indian players are looking back at him, smiling, grabbing him, and you could see the love for him. So, yeah, I'm surprised that they're going to go with Kohli, but I'm not at the same time. So we'll see what happens. But at least India, you've got so many different leaders coming up now, and it's exciting times for Indian cricket.
Yeah. How good was that gesture from India to Nathan Lyon? Heartwarming, wasn't it? Quite heartwarming.
Yeah. It just showed. I tell you what, though, it's funny, isn't it? The irony of Tim Payne and the Australians kept saying to the Indians, come to the Gabba, we'll beat you on the Gabba. It's quick, it's bouncy, and we'll beat you there. And look what happened. If India's got one of the highest totals on a fifth day on a Gabba wicket, which is quick, bouncy, and got cracks in it. It doesn't get more crazy than that, I don't think.
Right. Woo. All right. We're again going macro. We're always going macro, because that's the magnitude of this achievement, isn't it? We're trying to look at, in this broadcast, we're trying to look at what are the minor details that went into winning the series for India, but we're always going macro because there's a larger thing at play here. The magnitude of the achievement for India, and also the questions for Australia. Quite big looming questions. What are some of the questions, Guy, that Australia will look to address at the moment? Will it be largely centered around Tim Payne?
I think so. Yeah, I think that there's already questions. Obviously, you guys probably don't see a lot of the media here, but on our major sport channels, there's a lot of questions around, is Tim Payne carrying on? And he's come out and he said he is. He said he wants to play some more series. He says he's got more to give. So I don't know. I just think it's like I said before, it's a dark day in Australian cricket history, especially after what happened in Adelaide. So there's questions around the batting. That's the main thing. Is Will Pucovski is a serious talent, but he plays a couple of games and he gets injured or something like that, which is really unfortunate. But we just don't have consistent openers. And if you find yourself with a Warner or Marcus Harris or Joe Burns getting out early, it exposes Labuschagne, it exposes Steve Smith pretty early. So. And then the number 5 position, I think Cameron Green's been a revelation. I think he's going to be a pretty serious number 6 all-rounder in Test cricket. But the number 5, the question's been asked about Matthew Wade, the question's been asked about Trav Head. They want Trav Head to play, but his numbers aren't suggesting that he probably will play for a long time at the moment. So there's a hell of a lot of questions around the batting in Tim Payne, and there needs to be a lot of answers.
Number 5, Guy spoke about number 5. Incredibly important position throughout the series. Sandipan for India, Ravindra Jadeja, Washington Sundar, 2 folks who occupied that spot, both delivered fantastically well. Was that the number 1 highlight of the series for us? Because the depth that India have had in their squad, and how every replacement has executed their plans and continued to sort of punch above their weight, if you'd like to say that.
Absolutely. I think that throughout the series we have seen, probably barring Adelaide, we have seen whenever Australia seemed to be on the driver's seat, there was a counter punch from the Indian team, and some of these youngsters, they put their hands up. For example, the partnership of Sundar and Shardul in this Gabba test, India were 180 for 6, and they were trailing almost 190 odd runs. Yeah. So I guess at that point, that partnership that brought the deficit down to maybe 30 odd runs, and that was I think in the context of the game, that was the turning point. Then bowling Australia out for 294 after they got an opening stand of 89, and the way Siraj bowled, the way these young. So throughout this series we have seen these performances from these Indian youngsters. I think rather than highlighting any one particular point or one particular player, I think we need to talk about the entire bunch of players who did not let the Indian team miss their big players.
what goes into that guy? I mean, you've been a part of a number of teams in the past. In the Australian setup, of course, in franchise cricket, of course. What goes into building an incredible team culture? Because it seems like this Indian team is quite tight, and they want to play for a cause. To get them to that point is not an easy task.
It's not. Yeah, culture is one of the hardest things that we all try to strive for in sports. So, and that's why I kept bringing up Rahane, is because you see the love that the players have for him. So whatever he's doing, it certainly is working. And like you just touched on before, Sandipan, like it's like India used 20 something different players during the test series. Like, what a squad! Like the squad mentality and culture around that. A bloke might not play 3 test matches, but he might come into the 4th test not playing a test match in a do or die series and perform. Like, to be honest with you as well, when Washington got named, I thought that's Australia will prey on him because he doesn't spin the ball enough. So I thought, you know what? If Warner gets in, if Smith gets in, he won't get him out. But he got wickets. He got him out, and his batting was a revelation as well. And you touched upon that partnership. I think that was the defining of the game. That was, if they didn't have that partnership, Australia would have been 150 ahead, and India would have never considered about even thinking about winning the game. It would have been try to draw it. So I think the big part of the series, except for Adelaide, for India has been every single time someone has needed to stand up for India, they did it. Like Ashwin and Bahari, like Ashwin did always with the ball, like Jadeja did with the ball sometimes, like Washington did with the bat. Like whenever there was a moment for India to win that session, they did it. And that's what's so impressive, is the fight that they had. So whatever culture they've built in the Indian side right now, it looks incredibly strong.
A lot of contribution in that space has gone via the domestic circuit, and the culture that's been set for the India A sides guy that tour along with your main 11s and your main squads that are playing your headline series. When these squads tour countries abroad and get that invaluable experience, it just adds to these folks coming on board and sort of adding value to the main 11s as well. Sandipan, I was actually reading a stat in the last couple of days that the likes of Hanuma Vihari, Mayank Agarwal, Washington Sundar and Mohammad Siraj have all played more than 10 India A games in the last 2 or 3 years, which just shows, Guy, that these folks who are not usually regarded as your top tier athletes, top tier test cricketers, have already gotten some decent level of exposure with the red ball in foreign conditions, and that changed everything, didn't it?
Absolutely. There is a whole process. There is a whole back. There are guys who walk behind the scenes without any limelight.
Yeah.
I think I was also reading a stat that India has produced more India A tours than any other cricket boards in the world.
Exactly.
And that's we call it sadder tours. So whenever we go to England, our A team was playing. They go ahead of us, and some of the youngsters get acclimatized with the conditions. So they get themselves ready. If in case there is a vacancy in the spot, then they can jump in. And someone like Shubman Gill, he has been a part of the India 8 setup for a long time now. Siraj, and not only just India A, the India's domestic structure. We all talk about seal cricket, we all talk about cricket, but India's domestic structure, the competitiveness in India's domestic structure has been given these players have some valuable experience. I mean, can you imagine? There are 38 domestic teams in Indian circuit, first-class teams I'm talking about, which play Ranji Trophy. And then we have Dalit Trophy, then we have these India A tours. So there is a virtual pipeline has been created for these players. And I was actually I got the opportunity to talking with Rahul Dravid about it a few months back when you were also in Lucknow. At that point, India, he was with the under-19 team. At that point, Rahul Dravid mentioned a very important factor, that it's not about winning the under-19 World Cup, or it's not about winning an India A tour. These tours is just a platform for these youngsters. It is important that how many of those under-19 players go on to probably lead their Ranji Trophy team, or go on to make it to the India A level. And if you see the conversion level of these from under-19 to India A, it has been really remarkable at least in the past 5 years. So all this, even Rishabh Pant, I was in Bangladesh covering the Under-19 World Cup when Rishabh Pant first came into the scene. He was to open the innings with Ishan Kishan over there. Yeah. So all these players have come through an competitive what should I say, age group playing age group
That's
cricket. And of course the IPL, you have to credit people often criticize IPL for maybe it is against test cricket, it is but I think all these players, look at Natarajan, it's a product of IPL. He played first TNPL, then he promoted to IPL, and now he is playing for India in all three formats. So I guess this whole entire pipeline is responsible for this such a renaissance of this Indian side.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. I think it all boils down to the processes, but it also, the application of these players in tense conditions has been the absolute.
And also, I think Justin Langer mentioned a very important point, that India is a country of 1.3 billion people, and if you are to play in the best 11 of this team, you have to have something in you, right? You cannot just qualify to play for the Indian cricket team if you don't have the have the credibility, or if you don't have the that inherent material in you. So I guess that's a very important point, I think.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. I think, like I was saying a couple of moments ago as well, that it's, you obviously have set processes in place, and that's such an important thing in sport today. You look at other sports in the country, Guy, to be honest, where you look at other sport and you realize that there's a lack of structure in the progress of junior athletes to go on and represent the country. But in cricket, these processes in India have been set really well, in the last decade or so, and they're reaping the benefits of it.
I'll tell you the problem for Indian cricket now is when you get Kohli back, when you get even a Prithvi Shaw batting well, when you get Jasprit back, when you get Shami back, when you get Sharma back, like, there's too many players that have proved himself in this test match. How hard selection going to be? Like, you can't really say to Washington, oh, you bowled beautifully, you batted beautifully, you're dropped next test match. So what do when Ashwin comes back, Jasprit comes back? Like, Siraj was amazing. I thought for a bloke that's played two test matches or 3 test matches or something, the way he led that attack was like he played 100 test matches. So India's got a problem, and they've got a very good problem, that they've got too many people that could play test cricket.
Yeah, and 2 captains.
Unfortunately, probably Washington Sundar will miss out in the first test.
He will,
because Ashwin.
How stiff is that? Like, he's been a part of one of the most decisive innings in Indian cricket, and unfortunately, next test match against India, they're going to probably say, Washington, put the jacket on, mate, and go get the drinks, because you'll be running them all day.
I think we have seen people being dropped after scoring a 300 in a test match. So I guess
that's happened to Karun Nair. That's correct. But I think credit to the Indian management for this, because they've set processes in place, and they've told every single player that we're going to follow our processes. The likes of Sundar, Siraj, and the others will go back to the drawing board and continue toiling in domestic cricket. They'll continue, being a part of the test squad and continue their learning process, because there's recognition that these folks are 21, 22, 23, and their future's ahead of them. While the likes of Ashwin and Bumrah are the present, and Shami and Nishant, of course, are the present, and they'll continue to sort of toil away for India. So I think there's a problem of plenty, of course, but a very good problem indeed for India. Guy, if I have to put the spot on you and ask you, what are the top 3 moments for you in this Border Gavaskar Trophy? What would those be?
Yeah, I think first of all, India's fight back second test after getting embarrassed, getting bowled out for 36, and I remember all my Indian friends have said it was the dark day of India's test match cricket in history. So for them to bounce back, incredible. Number one, that first day, I can still remember us 3 reviewed it and previewed the test match, and we said India have to start well on day 1, the second test, and they did. The other one, Rahane. I always liked him, but I've got that much respect for him and that much time for him. The way that he led that side, and not only that, he led with his own bat. He's not someone that comes out at you and chats and that sort of stuff. He does the talking with his bat, and he does the talking to his teammates behind closed doors. So he was ultra impressive. And I think the other thing, like we've just touched on, is India's depth. Like, I was thinking after all the injuries, I thought, Australia will trample this. Their bowling attacks had 10 test matches between them. But it just shows you the depth. And like you said, the cricket, the state cricket in India must be a great management. There must be great structure around, because they're producing some incredible players. We hardly had an injury, and you guys would have had 8 or 9 of them. So just shows you they're my 3.
Sandipan?
Yeah, of course. I think probably the most valuable experience I have taken from this tour is India have Rahane ready as a test to take on, take the onus on from Virat Kohli as
Sandipan is the flag bearer of this moment, guy. Make note of this moment. He's the flag bearer.
The Rahane fan club.
Rahane fan club. Just
I have been a supporter of Rahane's captaincy probably since India's tour of South Africa, when despite being the vice captain he was dropped, and then he came back in Johannesburg and played a brilliant knock, and India won the test match. And also that the series decisive test against Australia in Dharamshala, which was also his debut as a test match. So I have seen enough of Rahane, so I know that he's probably an important whatever. So that Rahane's captaincy, and I think the fight back from India's tail in the latter half of the tour, because in the first half, India, even in the Indian team management, they were also concerned. They were also concerned about the lack of application, a lack of runs from the India's lower middle order. But I think towards the latter half of the tour, these lower middle order batsmen, they started contributing. And I think the evaluation of Mohammad Siraj as a bowler, he led the attack in the last 2 test matches. On his debut, he bowled just beautifully. He bowled beautiful lengths. He bowled incredibly, and considering that he has gone through a personal tragedy also, so the way he has put his country first and performed under, I think his emotions were visible throughout this series, because we have seen that on multiple occasions. I think these are the 3 moments for me from this test series.
The 3 for me are pretty clear. I think the first one is Ajinkya Rahane's 100 in the second test just changed the tide completely. All eyes were on Rahane, and when he came out to bat, it didn't look like he was even in an inch of doubt of his ability, and executed it to the T. And for the captain to put his foot down, there were so many conversations about Virat not being around, and that incredible gaping hole in the middle order. Rahane came in and owned it like the boss that he is. That's one for me. The second one has to be Ashwin giving it back to Tim Payne. Oh, it has to be that. Ashwin and Vihari, the way they survived in that test, there was the grit that these 2 gents showed on in that evening session post tea, when everything was happening. Australia were trying to do everything in their power to get them out. Absolutely incredible. And then when you go back and you see the backstory, and you realize that Ashwin could not stand up on that morning of the test. He could not walk, and for him to go out and play that way, and then for Vihari to bat with a torn hamstring, there was pretty much, that's pretty much the highlight for me. And the number 1 has to be Rishabh Pant chasing it on day 5. I mean, and I'd like to put that at number 1, because everybody in India, including myself, said to ourselves, just bat it out, play for a draw, and get the trophy back home. But Rishabh Pant had other plans, and he batted like a dream.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? It was funny because I was speaking of my friends, and I was at one of the Premier clubs in Victoria, and we were all saying they'll just bat for the draw. I think they needed 120 off 25 overs or 20 overs, and they'll bat for the draw here. And then when he started going, we're like, they can't, can they? They can't. And we just kept saying that until it got really close, and we're like, but he was slog sweeping the best off spinner in the world for 6 on a day 5 wicket at the Gabba. The talent the bloke has is phenomenal.
And the self-belief.
He's got spades of that, doesn't he?
You got to take long gone and mid on, long gone and mid on day 5 of pitch, hitting against the turn when you got like 40 runs to win, and 4 wickets in hand. Oh Jesus, that takes some guts. I was about to use another word, but I'm not going to use it. But it takes guts. It takes guts to do that indeed.
You know what was the turning point of that Washington Sundar Pant partnership was? I think the turning point was when Sundar was
Smashed him for 6.
At that point, the asking rate was close, reaching seven runs per over, and it seemed that India might at that point India might have think of something else. They might have played and Nathan Lyon bowling a negative line. You remember he was bowling Pant outside the off stump and the packed offside field. But that run, I think 10 runs scored in that over. I think 1 6 and a 4, and that changed the tide in India's favor. From that over point of view, I think the job was pretty clear for Rishabh Pant and Sundar.
Yeah, boys. Before we sign off, I think it's important for us to reflect and understand what the magnitude of this series really is, because remember, this was preceded by a time where we were in lockdown. Of course, the IPL happened. There were its and bits of cricket, but this series has given everybody a lot of happiness, a lot of joy in very difficult times, isn't it? I mean, especially for India, Guy, we've seen a lot of adversity. Australia obviously have handled COVID a whole lot better, but for India, it's been very tough. People have suffered. Things have not been very nice, and sport in all of this, and especially cricket, has brought a lot of joy to us, which is unprecedented, to be very honest.
Yeah, it does, isn't it? I think that's the big thing that came out of this, isn't it? Is that sport brings people closer together, and it's a talking point, and that's what people like to connect over. So I know you guys are doing it a little bit tough over there, so it's great that the cricket team's been able to come over here and provide some joy, because I'll tell you what, I'd love to see the percentage of Indian smiles as soon as they hit the winning runs yesterday. I think it would have been about half the country would have been smiling.
100%. The country stopped yesterday. It really did. The country really stopped yesterday. We stopped working. It was a working day. Everybody at their offices just put their files down and looked at the TV. And there was food ordered and things of that nature. Absolutely incredible.
I have a quick question to Guy. Guy, what according to you is this series? I mean, do you rate this series higher than probably the 2005 Ashes and that 2001 Border Gavaskar Trophy?
Yeah, I think it has to be up there, doesn't it? I think, like you boys said as well, around adversity and resilience, I don't think there's ever been a series that a team has shown more adversity and resilience than the Indian team. So I think with them series you mentioned, probably the test matches in those series were better just because they were really close. Where this actually was quite a weird series, wasn't it? Like Australia dominated, then India pretty much dominated, then it was a draw, and then it was a close test match. So we've had galore of absolutely every different possibility that we could have had. So I think the way that India dealt with adversity, and not just the players, like the coaching staff, and like you brought up, Sandipan, like with Siraj's personal tragedy, like things like that, like they're not easy things to deal with. So I can't believe the way India have performed, not only on the field but off the field. So what do you think? Do you think it's one of the best test series you've ever seen?
Yes, I like, considering the circumstances, I have to keep this one higher than 2001 and the 2005 Ashes.
Yeah, yep. It's right up there, isn't it? But I think the larger...
I think, Sumedh, your point of view?
Well, I think it really is right up there, isn't it? And I saw a very important post today. 2001, of course, began on an incredible note for India. We did the unthinkable at that point of time. Defeating that Australian team was unthinkable about. And then fast forward 10 years later, we won the World Cup. So hopefully it's the beginning of a great decade.
Let's hope so.
21. Yeah. And I think, and of course, just reading out a statement put out by Cricket Australia today, Guy, because that is obviously the larger picture here. Of course, Cricket Australia, when COVID happened, there were a number of layoffs. There were incredible financial issues, and and it's obviously understood that when India tours, the host nation makes a lot of money through broadcast rights and of course advertisement and sales. So Cricket Australia obviously put up the statement saying Australian cricket will forever be grateful to the BCCI for their friendship, trust and commitment in helping to deliver a series that has brought joy to many millions of people around us. Over the 9 weeks, India and Australia men's team completed in an outstanding series. And of course, we will never forget the sacrifices made by our friends at the BCCI that made all of this possible. That speaks a lot, isn't it? Because there was so much on the line. Yeah, there was so much on the line.
Not only by the BCCI people, but also by the players as well. Lot of sacrifices.
Yep,
absolutely.
Sure was. I think they've summed it up, haven't they? I think it's brought joy to so many people, and the BCCI and the players and the staff. Well done. Like, for them to come out here and risk a couple of things and be in isolation a lot of the time. And that, again, there you go, more adversity. They had to kind of be locked up the whole time, didn't they? And they went out and performed all the time. So they were too good. India's cricket team are just too good at the moment, and it's going to be an amazing series coming forward against England, because I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Let's hope that we'll meet Australia once again in the World Test Championship final.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be good, isn't it? You know what's been good, Guy? It's been great to have you on board as well on cricketnews.com. We've had a fantastic time having you on board, joining us from Australia, giving us your experience and your perspective, and we've thoroughly enjoyed having you on board. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, boys. It's been a pleasure to meet you both and to share some of my knowledge with your audience. So it's been awesome, and what a series, what a finish to it. So absolutely fitting, wasn't it? But thank you again.
Thanks again, Sandipan, as well, for joining us. Always great to have your unfiltered, flag-bearing insights on cricket news. Always fun.
There is no point being diplomatic on this platform, I guess.
There you go. That's what we like to hear. That's music to my ears. Thank you so much, gents. It's been fun.
Thanks
for that, boys. Cheers.